Welcome to the Hope Champions podcast with Project Harmony. I'm Hailey.
I'm Scott.
And I'm John.
Join us as we explore the science of hope and its profound impact on healing trauma, right here on the Hope Champions podcast. Welcome to the Hope Champions podcast. I'm Hailey.
I'm John.
And I'm Scott.
And we are so excited to be here with you all. Starting off with this first episode, we are just going to do a little intro about what Hope is. What is this show about? What's up with us going from Trauma Matters to Hope Champions? And let you get to know us a little better. So, want to introduce yourselves? Who wants to start?
I'd like to hear from John.
You would. All right. So, my name is Jonathan Davis. You can just call me John. But I tell everybody, including here, that my name is Jonathan Davis. The reason I say that is because my mom named me that and she wants everybody to know it. So now everybody knows. But you can just call me John. She calls me John as well. I'm a training specialist here at Project Harmony. I've been here for just shy of 5 years. And in my role, I go out and I present the trainings that we have here. We go to community, a number of different community entities, schools, hospitals, churches, wherever you name it. They ask for trainings, and I am one of the trainers that go to provide it.
And what's some stuff you want to share about yourself? Do you have a sports team you like?
Oh, yes, I do. I do. At the moment, the Carolina Panthers are my favorite football team. We are not in good state right now, but
you have hope.
I do have hope. And it is already starting to turn around. Now, do I have anything to contribute to that, to be able to help? Not so much, but I'm cheering them on regardless.
So really, you have optimism. We'll talk about why.
Exactly. Exactly. But yes, hobbies. I do enjoy video games. One of my other main interests is Pokemon. I can talk all day about Pokemon. I have yet to find somebody on campus that can talk to me. I take that back. I am so sorry.
As I glare at you across the table, I'm a level 43 Pokemon master.
And
proud, 43.
He actually is higher level than me, so I feel kind of shameful to say that right there in front of him. So yes, Scott would be the only person that I talk to about Pokemon on the regular.
And your favorite Pokemon?
My favorite Pokemon is Slowking, part of the Slowpoke line.
Mine is Cubone, the lonely Pokemon.
Aww.
Really?
Isn't that sad?
I really liked Charmander when I was a kid.
We can go all day on this, so let's dial it back.
You could
So
also
if you
be
like
a lobster.
Pokemon, you're going to fit right in.
Yeah. Lobsters, crawdad.
Scott, your turn.
Well, you already learned about my favorite Pokemon. I'm the Vice President of Prevention and Early Intervention, which means I oversee the training team and Connections, our school-based mental health program. Other than Pokemon, I'm a pretty avid gardener. I'm just putting my garden to bed for the year, which is a relief at this time of year. So,
And what do you do literally, I don't know, gardening? What is it to put it to bed? Like you harvest everything and you're like, well.
you harvest everything and you let the freeze do its work.
Well, I like the peppers you bring.
I'll bring you some more.
You know, one thing when you said gardening that I feel ashamed again that I didn't talk about my houseplants. I love houseplants.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you do love
You have a
plants.
really good collection of plants here.
Yes, all throughout campus.
Yeah. Well, I'm Hailey. I'm the digital media specialist at Project Harmony. I started 3 years ago now. And originally it was just a part-time social media thing. And then they found out I do video and podcasting and all this stuff. And they offered me a full-time gig. And I was like, yes, please.
I did not
Please.
know that. I did not know it started off as part-time.
Yeah. I come from a broadcasting video background. So I came from a video studio, did some podcasts there. I co-hosted another podcast with a local radio station back then.
Oh, goodness.
So I love podcasting. So as soon as the opportunity came to pick this up and run with it, I said yes. So I'm very happy to be here with you guys.
Oh, that's cool. This is your thing.
It's my
Okay.
thing. I
like
love
that.
it. But yeah, at home, what do I even do? I hang out with my dog. I hang out with my dog Poppy. I like to try different restaurants. I don't like to say I'm a foodie. I'm probably a foodie. A little bit.
Poppy is what breed?
Poppy is an Australian Shepherd.
Ooh.
She is blind. Yep. She's a rescue.
Completely.
She's totally blind. She had glaucoma a few years ago and
Oh,
randomly was bumping into stuff, and I was like, uh-oh. And then I took her to the vet. They're like, yeah, she's like straight up blind. And I was like, well, she's doing great, because I didn't even notice until...
Wait. So do they know how long? Was she blind the whole time?
No.
Okay.
I started noticing. And so when I adopted her during COVID, which is like when a ton of people got dogs. Oh. And I lucked out with her. I always wanted an Australian Shepherd, got her. And then they told me, okay, she has a genetic issue. So she might become deaf or blind at some point.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, I'll cross that bridge when we get there. And then it finally just randomly happened. But she learns where she's at really quickly. Yeah, my backyard is really complex, and she knows it.
Oh.
Like the back of her paw.
Man.
Yeah, but that's all I do.
We have to give a shout out to our sound technician, Laura.
Yes.
She has to deal with a lot of scream laughing.
Yeah. And has to try to hold in her laugh.
That's right.
I see how much of a struggle it's been already.
Okay, let's get into Hope 101. So if you listened to the last episode, you heard Lizzie Hudson, who was with us and started this whole podcast process, the show. She did 3 seasons with us. And she kind of talked about our transition from Trauma Matters Omaha to Hope Champions Network. So along with that, we're changing the podcast as well to reflect kind of this second phase, new direction we're in. So do one of you want to explain a little bit about that process and how we have arrived to Hope Champions?
Absolutely. So when we started working to make Omaha a trauma-informed community, we knew that we needed to train a tipping point of people to understand trauma, to be able to define it, to be able to spot it, to be able to see how it influences people. And eventually, as we hit that tipping point of people, which was identified at 22,000 people, we've now trained almost 40,000 people to do that. We recognized that we needed to equip them to do something about it when they see it. And hope is the number one predictor of future well-being. We know that when people are hopeful, they're better able to handle the impact of trauma in their lives. So we thought, what better way to help people deal with trauma than to teach them about hope science?
So Scott, what is the Hope Champions Network?
The Hope Champions Network is our attempt to make Omaha a city of hope. We want to train people to understand hope science and to apply it in whatever role they play in our community, so that any child out in our community, any caregiver in our community, wherever they go, they encounter people who understand hope and know how to build it in them. So to that end, we train our Hope Champions in 4 trainings: on trauma, on empathic strain, on defining hope, and on using hope science. We ask them to go deliver those trainings in their spheres of influence, and we ask them to apply hope science in all the work they do.
What I like about this podcast form too is we're trying to make Omaha a hope city. But what's great about the podcast is it reaches far past Omaha. We have listeners from all over the world. So we're able to just share this information and share the awesome work that's being done in other communities. And if you're interested in learning more about it, you can, listen to this podcast and visit our website and all that stuff we say at the end.
Absolutely. We now have 300 Hope Champions across the United States, not just locally.
So I just did one of our interviews recently, and something I told our guest was, I'm the least knowledgeable about the hope stuff. So I feel like I'm learning right along with our listeners. What is, because you've done hope training, you've had to
Oh, yeah.
lead these trainings.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, you're like the ultimate hope guy. John, what's your favorite thing about this focus on hope?
I think that my favorite thing is while I'm there training them, I'm having them think about ways that they can apply it in their community. We know that every community that we have within, especially our state where we're starting off, they have different challenges. You know, rural areas versus metropolitan areas, there's a big difference in some of the things that they see. So while we're talking to them and we're explaining through going throughout the different trainings, and like you said, or like Scott said, we're training those individuals to be able to train those same trainings. So a train the trainer model, it's always fascinating when I can see them apply it to their particular community. Because, for example, when I was out in Scotts Bluff, I think around June, one of the things that they thought about was they said that, when we make a call to the family's home, they're not answering. Because usually when we make these calls, it's usually something negative. Usually we're talking about your child did this, we need to talk to you about that, or your child missed that. So it was always negative things. So they thought, well, why don't we just try to do it a little bit different and maybe have those phone calls and start calling and give them praise for something that their child did. Because everybody knows what that first three numbers of the school is when they call. So when they see that first three digits pop up, they're not answering the phone. They'll just let it go to voicemail and maybe deal with it later. So that's one of the things that they said they're going to start trying to do is try to instill some of those positive things so that when they see that phone call come through, it's not always negative. So I like seeing the groups when they start coming up with different ideas and how it can affect their particular community and how that they can turn that around and let the family see that hope can drive a lot of different better outcomes. So I think that's one of my favorite things about it.
I love that example, especially just Scotts Bluff. Like, I love how we're able to reach these different areas across our state, across the nation, with this podcast across the world.
It's beautiful in Scotts Bluff, by the way, for those that are out there.
Chimney Rock, hello.
Love it out there. I thought I was in a whole. I was like, I'm still in Nebraska. Couldn't believe it.
But Mountain Time Zone, yeah.
Yes, yes. But I enjoyed my time there.
My favorite thing about the work is that it's easy to understand. It's easy to define. It only requires about two or three specialized vocabulary words. You have to be able to define hope, pathways, agency. But I also like that it's really focused on well-being. Too often in our work, we talk about resilience. There's 1,000 different definitions of resilience, right? It means something different to everybody, to the point that it's almost hard to talk about. But well-being is that you have the emotional and mental capacity to live your life well. That's really easy to understand, and it hits all of us, whether you're 3 or 90. So the application of this work is for everyone, even though we focus primarily on kids. It's really for all of us.
I really like that when I was introduced to this idea by you guys and when we made this whole change, is that it's not like toxic positivity. It's not like, oh, you've experienced hard things, get over it. Like,
be happy.
Just be grateful, be happy. It's not like that at all. It's a really sustainable way to kind of heal, basically, and gives you steps to follow that help you build your hope, help you. Something I talked with one of our guests that you'll hear later this season is goal making, and how something as simple as that makes such a huge difference to our healing journey and where we go in life and our level of success, or how we would measure success. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. So I'm excited to talk more about that.
Yeah. That toxic positivity is really when people are like talking about a mindset. Be positive, think positive thoughts. Hope is action-based. In order to do hope, you have to take action. That's what I like about it too.
So let's talk about, just briefly, we don't have to go into all the definitions, but let's talk about some common language that we're going to use this season that might be good for people to know. Well, first, let's talk about, you said just earlier about defining hope. What is the definition of hope?
Hope is the belief that I have a bright future ahead of me and I have some power to make it happen. So whereas optimism is, I believe I have a bright future ahead of me, period. Hope has that action step to it. I can do something about it.
Yeah, it's trying to make sure, and that's one of the things when we started doing this that I had to tell myself to start paying attention to the way that I use that word, because I think most people say, well, I hope it doesn't rain this weekend. I have no ability to make that not happen.
That's really a wish.
It's a wish. So it's changing your language, which is not easy to do because I still sometimes go back to saying that. But I always think, well, I don't have any way to change that. That's actually not what I meant. So
for people who don't know hope as a science, we'll get more into this, I think, later in this season. But how is hope a science? How is that a thing? What does that look like?
Well, it's a science because we can study it. It's action-based and it's skill-based. So we can teach it, we can measure it, and by teaching and measuring it, we can tie it to a host of other outcomes. So the science of hope tells us that when kids experience higher levels of hope, they have higher attendance at school. They have higher academic achievement, right? The social scientists can measure all of that and look at the relationships between it. So we'll be talking to researchers here locally who are doing some of that work and what they're learning about it.
What would you say to people who don't buy into this hope practice or this idea that we're trying to build a hopeful city, a hopeful community? What would you say to naysayers?
Well, I think the important thing to say to them is, do not believe in science, right? There is so much research out there on this that shows that hope is the number one predictor of well-being. It's so clearly documented that I don't know how you can't look at that documentation and at least acknowledge that there's something going on there.
I'd really ask what other things do they usually hold on to or what's driving them? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of different answers, but and they're not going to be wrong with those necessarily, but I don't think you can deny that hope is a powerful thing and it can really change people's lives.
What about the tough guys that say hope is fluffy or I don't need this?
Yeah, when people come to our trainings, that's one of the things we sometimes hear to begin with. How do you talk about this? It's all fluffy stuff. It doesn't make sense. It's all just emotional mumbo jumbo. And I go back to the same thing again. I show them the research, and it's really a misunderstanding, like John shared, that we often misuse the word. We don't always understand what it means. And when we clearly define that it's that belief that I have a bright future, that I have pathways that can take me there, and that I can handle the obstacles that get in my way, that makes it concrete enough that people can get their minds wrapped around it.
I'm not sure there's too many people that can hear that definition and say that they've never been in a situation that would have had them even have hope, or that they couldn't find themselves in a situation where they wouldn't have needed hope when you have the pathways and the agency. So yeah, if we'll get into it a little bit farther, it's hard to be able to dance around it. But yes, we will explain that a lot more. But yeah, I don't think you can, it's going to be hard to deny it. And if you do, that's perfectly fine. We welcome you to still come in and then let us know your thoughts after you do attend the training, or let us know your thoughts from listening to this podcast too. So
yeah, like, subscribe, leave a comment.
Helping the algorithm.
That's right.
Even if it's just your favorite Pokemon.
Thank you.
Leave a comment of your favorite Pokemon, please.
Please, Slow King fans, come out strong for me.
Oh, you know which one? I lied. Okay, Snorlax.
Snorlax. My daughter's going to be Snorlax for Halloween.
I need to see what that looks like.
Yeah, we need pics or it didn't happen. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's important for listeners to understand that at Project Harmony, we're really basing our hope work in our trauma work, right? We have 8 years in educating the community about trauma. As a child advocacy center, we see people on some rough days. And in order to do that work day in and day out, we have to have hope. We have to believe that the clients who come to us on any given day have a bright future ahead of them. Even though we're seeing them on a really dark day, we have to believe they have great things ahead of them. So you'll hear there's a lot of people doing hope work out around the country these days, but ours is really based in that understanding of applying it to help the community understand and deal with trauma.
Yeah. No better way than to be able to apply it to something that you can tangibly see and tangibly use on a regular basis, depending on your community where you're at.
So to you guys, what does it look like when someone is hopeful? Or what would it look like? I don't know if you guys have a story you'd like to share of an example of someone who's maybe hit a rough patch or whatever it might be and then come out from the other side.
Yeah. I have a story that I can share that really kind of illustrates the application of this work. And again, let's keep it to child advocacy, right? John's a former case manager in Child Protective Services. So John, when you stepped in and worked alongside a family, who set the goals? Who defined the bright future? Who problem solved?
We had them do it. We posed the problem that was there, and our job was to show them those different paths that they can get to that bright future that they had. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't us trying to run their families. They can run their families perfectly fine. We were just there to help them see that they can get to the bright future and what paths they can take to get to it.
And that's what it looks like when it's done well. And I think sometimes in our systems, regardless of what our systems are, we get so overwhelmed with the amount of work we have to do that it becomes really easy to define the bright future for them. The judge says you have to. In order to get your kids back, you have to do this, this, or this. We define the pathway. We oftentimes step in the hurry to get things done and solve the problem for them without teaching them how to do it. And the trick to hope work is what John just said. We have to teach people to do it. So every organization has ways by which we build hope in our clients and ways that we rip hope down. So when you were talking about case management, you really defined what it looks like when it goes well. What are some of the traps that case managers might fall into that could essentially rip hope from their clients?
There are a ton of traps that you can fall into. Judging, complaining, ordering. All those things can be really detrimental to the relationship that you would have with that person. If I walk in the home, you already might have that assumption about me that, I'm just getting paid for this, or I don't really care, and all those things. So it can be easy that we might have read an intake beforehand and know what the situation is. We know this person is just angry or they're really combative. So when we go into the home, we're already thinking that, and we already just go with that assumption. So going with that assumption that way can lead to a lot of discord. There can be a lot of clashing and things that won't be productive for that particular meeting. So going into it with a clean slate and again, like we talked about, asking them what their bright future is. We know there's going to be some things that family may have to do, but we can still present that in a way that can be beneficial for the family. Yes, you have to make sure that you make it to these meetings. These meetings are going to actually benefit you because you're going to learn more about your child. You're going to learn more about maybe the traumas that your child has been through in better ways to help them. So to be able to give them that affirmation, especially afterwards, that them doing this particular thing benefited them and their family in this way can really reinforce why the things that they're doing are very well, or and how they're going to benefit from it.
So things like checking the assumptions you're making, affirming your client, just summarizing what you hear them say.
OARS, our acronym, OARS, open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. We can go into that later too.
Sounds like the Jedi mind trick.
Oh, yeah.
They use oars.
Keep that part in there. Yeah. But yes, that's what I would say with that.
I'm a former educator, 33 years in K-12 education as a teacher, a school counselor, and an administrator. And one of my favorite stories comes from when we started to implement Hope Work. We had a fourth grader who was really struggling behaviorally. Anytime we asked him to do something difficult, it would get ripped up, shredded, thrown on the floor. If it continued, sometimes we had tipped over desks, sometimes we had profanity, sometimes we had walking out of the room. And we had all sorts of goals for him as educators. We were trying to teach him self-control strategies. And you know what? He could do them. We taught them to him. But when he started getting upset, he never applied them. And we felt like we were kind of just hitting a wall over and over again. And it wasn't until we started doing Hope Work and we really asked him what his bright future was that we started making progress. Because his bright future was drawing bugs. He loved bugs. We used to have to search his pockets after recess because he would try to bring in live crickets and locusts and back into the classroom. And when he told me that he wanted to learn to draw bugs, his favorite bug was a locust, and that's what he wanted to learn to draw. And I said, Bud, how many times are you going to have to draw it before you get good? And he said, probably 50 or 60. And I said, what happens when we ask you to do something that's hard? And he looked at me honestly, right? He was real honest. He said, you're right. I tend to wad the paper up, throw it on the floor. Sometimes I tip tables over. Sometimes I call the teacher names. And I said, are we going to have to do that 50 or 60 times before you get good at drawing your locust? And he looked at me, and I kid you not, he said, maybe I should use some of those self-control strategies you've been trying to teach me. It wasn't until he had a reason that meant something to him that he could start doing it. He now had his own bright future. Our bright future was that he stayed out of the office and he stayed in class learning. That didn't mean anything to him. His bright future was, I want to learn how to draw a bug, right? And then we could find the pathways together. One of the pathways was what we wanted him to do. We can teach you these skills and you can practice them and get good at using them. And over the course of the next 6 weeks, he got progressively better at handling his emotions. We still had ups and downs. But by the end of that 6 weeks, we weren't seeing nearly the behavior that we had seen from him prior. And he was starting to take those skills and applying them to other places in his life other than just drawing bugs. Now, as an educator, anytime you give me a tool that I get a result like that in 6 weeks, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up a good point when you said you asked him what his bright future was. It's easy for us sometimes, especially with court orders or just maybe practices that we've seen or studied and researched, that we tend to focus on that particular family or client or student getting to that particular bright future. But honestly, it's us putting that on them. Asking him what his bright future was, sometimes you might run into somebody that they've never been asked what their bright future is. They just know, I just got to go with what everybody else says and just do this so everybody else is happy, even though it's something I may not want to. But giving them the power to show them that it's your bright future and there's ways for you to actually get there, that's so powerful. Somebody can get so much out of that, knowing that I knew how to get there, or I was shown the way and I did the work. That's what we did in case management. We show you this is what you can do. You can do this. You're able to parent your child. Yes, they may have behaviors, but there's tools and things that you can do to get the bright future that you want for your family.
That's what I've really enjoyed learning about as we dive in more into this hope topic, is how important it is to get that agency to kind of take control back over your life, especially after an event that, rocks your world in some way or makes you feel out of control. Hope helps you get that control back and take responsibility and move forward. And so I really like that idea of kind of putting the ball in their court and letting them know, no, this is your choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. We love in our trainings to ask our participants, what does hopeful blank look like? Insert whatever you're passionate about. John's an athlete. He knows what a hopeful coach is like because he probably had some hopeful coaches in his life.
Oh, yeah.
He probably had some that weren't as hopeful, and I bet you weren't as motivated to play for him either.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So what does hopeful soccer coaching look like for kids? What does hopeful policing look like? We don't have the answers to all of those things, but we can help ask the questions that will help those people get answers. In the Hope Champions Network, we have a group of schools right now who are saying, how can we further enhance our parent-teacher conferences? This is conferences are happening right now. As a parent, I can tell you, I went to some conferences that weren't always very hopeful. So what does a hopeful parent-teacher conference look like?
As a student, I've been to some very unhopeful ones as well.
Right? What does hopeful recess look like at school? What does hopeful pediatrics look like? Right? Anybody who works with families can ask the question, and the Hope Champions Network can give you the tools to help you answer it.
I think this has been a good intro for this episode. A little, not a total deep dive, but a little Hope 101 to get you started so you kind of know what we're going to be going into this season. Every week, we're going to meet at the end and we're going to ask, what gives you hope this week? So, John, what gives you hope this week?
Oh, man. Well, I would say that just in general, it gets to be busy sometimes, especially in work and in life in general. So just knowing that my family's there to back me up and that I'm able to be present with them. I know there's a lot of people that aren't as fortunate to be able to have all their family with them or be in the same space. But for me to be able to be there and be a parent to my children and with my family that's what helps me be hopeful.
This week, I find hope in our community partners. In my job, I get to interact with the community a lot. There's a lot of organizations in town who step up and help us support families. And the message that it sends to me is that you're not alone. You don't have to have all of the answers. Part of hope is recognizing that there's times where it gets really, really hard and there's obstacles. And we may not be able to solve those obstacles alone, but I'm pretty confident when we get a whole bunch of our partners in the room, there's nothing we can't figure out.
I feel like my more consistent answer would be like yours, John, like my family and my loved ones and all of that. I think like surface level, what gives me hope this week, just having things to look forward to.
Yeah.
I think
having a bright future.
Yes. Yeah. That bright future, like something I've been a lot more intentional about this year is making more time for friendships. And so sometimes I feel like I'm overbooked. Like, why did I say yes to all this? But then I, show up, I hang out with this friend, I get coffee with this friend every week. And the difference it's made is really incredible. So I'd say if you're feeling a little down, like reach out to a friend. I know that's really cheesy, but it really does help kind of having those check-ins and doing something for yourself, not just, wake up, go to work, eat, go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I hear you saying is a tip that we share with people all the time. The best way to build hope in yourself is to surround yourself with hopeful people.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're feeling a little down, find those friends and surround yourself with them.
It's contagious.
Coming up over the next few weeks on this season of Hope Champions podcast, we are each going to sit down with a guest and deep dive into this topic of hope. John, can you tell us what your episode's going to be on?
My interview is going to be with Susie Yoakley Busby, and we're going to be talking about building hope in ourselves.
I'm going to be talking to two research scientists from the Boys Town Center for Translational Research. They are actively measuring hope in young people alongside several other measures, and they're going to be telling us what they're finding in their research and how hope is impacting other outcomes for kids.
And my episode, which will be the season finale, is with Jerlene Mosley of Mosley Consulting. She also worked with Gallup for 30 plus years, and she has an incredible background on hope research, but also just putting hope into action into our lives, both with students and adults. Thank you so much for joining us for our first episode of Hope Champions podcast. Please join us and become a Hope Champion with us and keep listening. Can't wait to see you there.
Thanks for listening to the Hope Champions podcast with Project Harmony. For more information about the podcast or how to become a Hope Champion in your community, visit our website at projectharmony.com/Hope Champions. Listen, rate, and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Keep up with us and the rest of Project Harmony on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Project Harmony and on X at Project Harmony 2. See y'all in the next episode.